Kane Voss stops just inside the dim corridor, every muscle held in a poised stillness. Cold light from the overhead strips gleams across the polished floor, forming a harsh contrast against the swirling neon colors beyond the reinforced glass. On the other side of that barrier, Saryevek shifts her weight, the soft rustle of leather the only audible hint that she's moving. Her tail flicks in lazy arcs, and a flicker of subtle luminescence travels down the sleek lines of her body. She lifts her gaze, eyes like molten gold narrowing on him, yet neither says a word. Kane presses his lips into a tight line, refusing to betray a reaction, while her posture alone conveys a silent dare. Step closer if you dare, see what happens if you do. Saria tilts her head, letting a few strands of fiery orange hair slide across her cheek. The tension in the air is suffocating, charged with anticipation. One breath, two, three, then she curls her lips into a slow, taunting smile. Do I make you nervous, soldier? Or do you just not like what you see? Her voice thrums with a low, resonant hum that sends a tiny shiver through Kane's spine, but his expression remains carved from stone. For a split second, neither speaks further. She arches an eyebrow, as though expecting him to stammer or lash out, to do anything but stand there. Kane inhales silently, steps forward at last, and the clang of his boots echoes against the metallic walls. He finally speaks in a steady, lethal tone. I've seen worse than you. His eyes flick over her silhouette. The black straps of some alien design bind her curves, framing her in a way that suggests both danger and allure, but he locks his focus on her face. He doesn't smirk, he doesn't sneer. Instead, he watches her for any subtle shift, some sign of aggression or unexpected move. She's the captured one, yet she radiates more power from within that cell than most free warriors he's seen on the battlefield. She brushes the tip of one elongated ear, which twitches almost imperceptibly. Worse than me? I didn't realize your empire's cause had you tangling with Felithari hybrids on a regular basis. Her voice stays as smooth as silk, though the slight vibrato in its timbre sets his nerves on edge. She flicks an invisible speck of dust from her bare shoulder, and offers him another slow, mocking smile. But I'll let you cling to your bravado if it helps you sleep at night. Kane lifts his chin a fraction. I'm here for answers. I don't need conversation. He steps closer to the glass barrier. Her posture remains supremely languid, almost like a cat lazing in the sun, though he can see the coiled strength in her limbs. She's waiting for a moment, any moment, to strike, to break, to test the boundaries. His gut warns him she's neither helpless nor afraid. Answers, she repeats, rolling the word around her tongue. And you think I'll just hand them over because you asked nicely? She stands and prowls toward him, every movement a deliberate show of control. Through the transparent barrier, their gazes lock. Kane wonders how she managed to end up so calm in captivity. She's supposed to be a prisoner, yet she moves as though she owns the entire facility. He hasn't blinked. The tension in his shoulders multiplies. I'll get them one way or another. His voice is low, but it hits the air like a hammer. She responds with nothing but a smile, and that, more than anything, infuriates him. But anger is a tool he's mastered. It doesn't compromise his focus. He's seen entire star systems burn. He won't be rattled by a provocative smile, even if her presence thrums through the sealed glass like a living current. Her tail flicks against her thigh, and her bioluminescent markings pulse with what seems like amusement. So certain are we? You must be used to everyone bowing to your demands. Her words are a hiss of mockery. Then, abruptly, she turns and walks to the corner of the cell, her hips swaying with unhurried grace. Come in here and take them, then. Unless you're afraid to step inside. Kane's jaw tightens. He taps a code into the panel by the door, and there's a hiss as the barrier slides open. The facility's design was meant for maximum security, but he has override clearance. He knows it's a risk. Logic screams that this is a mistake, that she's a cornered predator with unknown capabilities, but he also feels the weight of personal urgency pressing him forward. She has information related to a name, a betrayal that cost him his entire squad, and he won't sit behind a barrier, letting her set the rules of engagement. He crosses the threshold. The door seals behind him with a daunting finality. Now they stand within arm's reach of each other. She's barefoot, wearing only that strappy black ensemble that leaves tantalizing glimpses of her lithe form. The close proximity floods Kane's senses with the subtle, exotic scent of her, something faintly floral, but with a sharp, metallic undertone. He wastes no time. Tell me everything you know about the lab on Deveron Prime. His tone is harsh, giving no quarter to her game. Their eyes meet in open conflict, sparks flying between them. She seems entirely unconcerned. I might, Saria says, voice rolling over him. If you make it worth my while. She lifts a hand, and for a second Kane tenses, prepared for her to lash out. But she only traces a half circle in the air, letting her fingertips hover just inches from his chest. Though I suspect you're here for something more than just intel. There's something in those eyes. Rage, maybe? Or regret. He grabs her wrist before she can move closer. His grip is punishing, though not brutal enough to break bone. Don't pretend you know me, he growls. She doesn't flinch, doesn't whimper. Instead, her lips curl into something like a dare, and he senses the silent challenge thrumming between them. She meets his strength with a measured stillness. Her pulse quickens beneath his hand, and her bioluminescent patches flicker with sharper intensity. Temper, she purrs. I'd hate to think you're already losing control. The words are a taunt, but beneath them, he detects a note of genuine excitement. She's enjoying this, or at least, she wants him to think she does. He releases her wrist abruptly, pushing her arm away. She steps back in a single fluid motion, eyes gleaming. We'll see who loses control first, he mutters. There's a twitch in his jaw as he represses the swirl of annoyance. He expected the Felitheri to be cunning, but this direct confrontation is more provocative than anything else he's faced. She paces around him, circling, flicking glances at his gear, his stance. Humans, she says in a near whisper. All that technology, all those rules. Yet one moment inside a chamber with something unfamiliar, and you're just as raw as any beast. She cuts him a sideways look. Your breathing is off. You've got a heartbeat hammering like a war drum in your chest. All that tension, it's delicious. He narrows his eyes. I have no time for your games, he bites out. You will tell me about Deveron Prime. You will tell me who gave you access, and you will tell me what they were doing to those shrunk alien cat girls in that lab. I know your resistance has used them, turned them into weapons. Or so the rumors say. He's careful to keep his tone cold, though the mention of that project sparks a memory of horror, mutilated creatures, half-sentient, used as living contraband. The so-called coconuts, that were rumored to be hyper-valuable parts of these cat-like hybrids. Her expression darkens a fraction. Such crude words, she murmurs. But yes, I know what happened there. The humans were cutting us up for research. They forced our kind into twisted experiments to harness our biology. I escaped. Not everyone was so fortunate. A trace of bitterness cracks the sultry veneer of her voice, but it's gone in a heartbeat. Now why do you care? For a moment, he's silent. Her question strikes deeper than he cares to admit. He came here for revenge, for leads on who sold out his squad, but hearing the details stirs an unfamiliar ache in him. It's fleeting, and he locks it away. You're going to give me names, he says simply, and then I'll decide what happens to you. He expects an outburst, but she only chuckles. Oh, you'll decide my fate? She steps closer, crossing her arms under her chest, putting an unapologetic emphasis on the curve of her body. That's not how it works, soldier. If you want my help, you'll need to do something for me first. She lowers her gaze, lashes sweeping down in a calculated gesture. I want out of this cell and safe passage off your Empire's station. Then, maybe, we'll talk about information. His mouth twists into a grim line. He anticipated a negotiation, but the raw confidence in her demand needles him. She's cornered, at his mercy, and still, she sets the terms. That's not an option, he snaps. She shrugs, unruffled. Then I hope your vendetta goes unfulfilled. She turns her back on him, which in itself is an insult. You can lock me up here forever if you like. You'll gain nothing, and someone else will sell that intel to the highest bidder. He crosses the small distance, grabbing her shoulder, forceful enough to spin her around. Her reflexes are lightning quick. She tries to twist away, but he holds fast, pressing her up against the cold metal wall. She doesn't cry out. If anything, her eyes blaze with a strange mixture of fury and something else, something dangerously close to excitement. The tips of her ears lie flat, a sign of aggression among her kind, if he remembers correctly. Listen, he growls, voice dropping an octave. I can make your life very painful if you refuse to cooperate. She peers at him through half-lowered lids, a slow exhalation warming the air between them. Do it, she challenges. Or are you all talk? He hates how her words ignite a response deep in his gut, a swirl of anger entwined with an undeniable pull. Her arrogance, her defiance, it stirs something primal he's spent years burying under discipline. Without warning, he releases her, stepping back. He needs distance before he does something rash. She exhales lightly, rubbing the place on her shoulder where he pinned her. Her lips curl into a small smirk. You're no mere guard, are you? There's something else driving you. Her voice gentles a fraction, though it still vibrates with that provocative hum. What did you lose on Deveron Prime, soldier? Or is that question too personal? Kane's hand drops to the gun at his hip, knuckles tightening. He has no intention of giving her any more ammunition. You'll know what I want you to know, he says. Now move. He gestures toward the exit. They're transferring you to a new location. I'm personally taking you there. She laughs, a low, throaty sound. Oh, how lucky I am to have an escort. She doesn't resist as he ushers her out of the cell, but her posture suggests she's biding her time, waiting for the right moment to turn the tables. They walk in tense silence through the labyrinth of corridors, passing thick steel doors and heavily armed guards, all of whom stare with a mix of fear and fascination at the infamous Felithari hybrid in Kane's custody. She holds her head high, as though she's strolling through a ceremonial parade. Kane can sense every shift in the air around her, every flex of her legs as she pads across the floor. The mission commands that he bring her to a secure hangar, where a transport waits to take them deeper into Imperial territory. Yet something already feels off. The corridor lights flicker once, twice, then stabilize. He glances around, hand hovering near his weapon. Saria notices, too. Problem? She purrs, feigning innocence, but there's an edge of tension. He mutters under his breath, scanning the walls. This facility isn't prone to power fluctuations. Before he can voice further suspicion, an alarm rings out, echoing against the metal walls. Emergency lights flash. Kane curses, flipping open a control panel to check the station's status. There's a security breach, multiple infiltration points, some sabotage in the docking bay. He stiffens. If the base is under attack, there's a high chance the raiders are after her. This timing is too perfect to be coincidental. Stay close, he snaps, though he instantly regrets giving her an order, as though she's a comrade. She merely arches an eyebrow. You assume I'd run off? She says with a cool amusement, but the hum of tension in her voice betrays her concern. If someone's here to rescue me, I'd rather not get in their way. Her tail flicks, and she studies him to gauge his reaction. He scowls. Rescue or eliminate you? I'm not sure which. Another explosion resonates through the corridors, followed by frantic shouting. Kane curses again, grabbing her arm more out of necessity than control. We need to move. They dart through the flickering lights, stepping over broken crates and shattered glass. Smoke begins to seep from the upper levels. Gunfire rattles in the distance. The thick stench of ozone and burning metal fills the station. Kane's grip on Saria's arm tightens instinctively, and she hisses, trying to yank free. I can run on my own, she snarls. Unless you're afraid I'll slip away. He doesn't loosen his hold, though he does let her move at a pace that matches him. The swirl of confusion around them, alarms, bursts of gunfire, makes it impossible to tell who's attacking or how many. Kane's training kicks in. He quickly scans each junction, pressing Saria against the wall while he checks corners. She remains surprisingly cooperative, perhaps understanding that her best chance of survival rests with him for the moment. They reach a junction just as a squad of black armored troopers storms in from the opposite direction. Kane drops into a defensive stance, weapon drawn. Saria's ears flatten against her skull. The troopers spot them, raising rifles in unison. For a heartbeat, no one fires. A man's voice booms from behind the troopers. Secure the Felitheri. Kill the human. Kane's eyes narrow. These attackers are definitely after her. He opens fire first, and a thunderous exchange of blaster bolts lights up the corridor. Saria ducks low, her reflexes uncanny, and Kane notices how she uses his body as partial cover without hesitation. But he needs no protection, he's all lethal efficiency, dropping 2 troopers with pinpoint shots, pivoting, then dropping another. One tries to flank them. Saria lunges, hooking a leg around the trooper's ankle, sweeping him off his feet in a fluid motion. Before the man can recover, she slams the edge of her hand into the gap in his helmet, cutting off his cry. She looks up with a flash of satisfaction, meeting Kane's gaze in the strobing emergency lights. He nods curtly and covers her while she confiscates the trooper's sidearm. "Don't do anything reckless," he growls, though it's a half-empty warning. He can see how her lips pull back in a feral grin, eyes gleaming. The enemy squad is scattered, more of them piling in from an adjacent corridor. They seem determined to capture her, not kill her, and that means if they succeed, Kane loses his only lead. The next few minutes blur into a violent dance of gunfire and adrenaline. Saria fights with feral grace, leaping into the fray with no hesitation. She's more agile than Kane anticipated, each movement precise and lethal. He covers her from behind, methodically gunning down troopers who try to corner them. Blood spatters on the walls, screams echo, and the metallic tang of spent blaster cells hangs in the air. When the immediate threat subsides, they pause in the smoldering corridor, bodies at their feet. Saria huffs a breath, glowing lines across her arms pulsing in a rapid rhythm that matches her elevated heartbeat. Kane himself is breathing heavily, though he tries to hide any sign of fatigue. "We need to get to the hangar," he says, glancing at her, "before more of these mercenaries flood the place." She spits onto the ground, shaking off the tension in her limbs. "I have no objection." Her tone is sardonic, but he senses her wariness. She's still a prisoner, but now their survival depends on working together. Her gaze flickers briefly over his face. "Who are these people? Could be private contractors, black market hunters, or a rival faction that wants to exploit your abilities." He checks the corridor. "Doesn't matter. We're leaving." Saria gives a short nod and adjusts the stolen blaster in her grip. They push on, weaving through the station's compromised sections. Twice they encounter more squads, but by combining their strengths, they make short work of each incursion. All the while, Kane can't ignore the maddening tension that crackles between them, unspoken, primal, fueled by the urgency of battle. Every time she presses against him in cover, his body reacts in ways he's not used to acknowledging. He forces himself to stay focused on the objective. They reach the cargo lift that leads to the main hangar. It's offline, power lines severed. Kane curses under his breath and pries open the emergency panel. "Keep watch," he mutters, rummaging through wires and circuit boards. Saria stands guard, ears alert for approaching footsteps. The chaotic swirl of alarms hasn't died down. If anything, the station trembles with new explosions overhead. The seconds tick by while Kane works quickly, trying to bypass the sabotage. Saria spares a glance over her shoulder, noticing sweat bead at his temple. "You're good at that," she remarks softly, though it's not quite a compliment. More like an observation that he's skilled beyond mere soldiering. He doesn't look back. "Stay quiet." A spark leaps from the wires, and the lift sputters to life. "Got it." He stands, wiping his hands on his trousers, and motions her to step onto the platform. "No telling if this will hold, but it's our best shot." They ride the lift in tense silence, the overhead lights flickering. They're both coiled tight, anticipating the next wave of attackers. This is a forced partnership, but the friction between them is undeniable. Each stolen glance is loaded with distrust, curiosity, and a heat Kane refuses to name. When the lift doors open, they emerge into the main hangar, now a war zone. Smoke belches from half-ruined ships, and mercenaries scramble around a perimeter of makeshift barricades. The craft Kane planned to take rests in the middle of the bay, still sealed, but pinned down by enemy fire. He counts at least a dozen heavily armed soldiers, plus a looming mech unit on patrol. He glances at Saria. Her lips twist into a grim smile, luminous patterns dancing along her arms. 12 or so, plus that big metal thing. You have a plan? Plan's simple, he says, double-checking the ammo pack for his blaster. We kill them, get on that ship, and leave. He tosses her a fresh battery pack he looted from a fallen trooper. She catches it smoothly, slotting it into her borrowed weapon. Straightforward, she acknowledges, a glitter in her eyes. I like it. She turns to him, flicking her tail. But if you betray me after we board, I'll rip your throat out. He gives her a tight, humorless smirk. Likewise. A hail of gunfire answers their first steps into the open. They dart behind a fallen crate, returning fire with pinpoint precision. The next few minutes become a storm of blazing shots, ricochets, and the acrid smell of scorched metal. Kane systematically takes down targets, pushing forward in short bursts, while Saria vaults over obstacles with feline agility, picking off enemies in fluid strikes. There's no time for words. It's a raw, desperate struggle just to inch closer to the vessel. The mech stomps into view, swiveling its cannon with a menacing whir. A single shot from that weapon can vaporize them. Kane signals for Saria to flank around, hoping to divide the mech's attention. She nods, bounding off to the side in a low crouch. The machine tracks her movements, ignoring Kane, just as he planned. He lines up a precise shot at a vulnerable joint in the mech's armor plating. Sparks are up, but it's not enough to bring the hulking thing down. Saria uses the distraction, launching onto a stack of crates, then springs onto the mech's back in a daring move. Her claws tear into wiring, hooking out vital electronics. The mech thrashes, cannon firing wildly into the ceiling. Debris rains down. Kane rolls to avoid a collapsing beam, then fires another shot at the damaged joint. Metal screeches, and the mech collapses to one knee. Saria clings to its torso, ripping out cables with savage efficiency, her face twisted in fierce concentration. With a final surge, the mech powers down, slumping with a thunderous crash. A hush falls over the hangar, broken only by the crackle of flames. Most of the mercenaries lie dead or dying. The few who remain retreat into the shadows, unwilling to face them further. Kane and Saria lock gazes in the swirling smoke, adrenaline pounding. Her chest heaves, and the flicker of her bioluminescent stripes betrays her excitement, her pulse racing. They've survived, together. He beckons her to follow. Inside, now, he orders, motioning toward the transport. She doesn't argue. They sprint up the boarding ramp, sealing it behind them. Kane rushes to the cockpit, fumbling with the ignition sequence as the station's klaxons continue to wail. The engines whine to life, sputtering momentarily but eventually stabilizing. Saria watches from behind the pilot's seat, tail swishing. Outside, more blasts rock the station. The enemy might already be regrouping. Without hesitation, Kane punches the throttle. The ship lurches upward, the landing struts retract, and in a surge of momentum, they rocket out of the hangar. Fire from anti-ship turrets rakes across their shields, but he pushes the engines to maximum. They burst through the station's outer perimeter into open space, leaving the chaotic firefight behind. He sets a course away from the star system, scanning for any pursued vessels. Moments later, the sensors confirm multiple bogies launching behind them. Saria leans over his shoulder, eyes flicking across the display. Her breath brushes the nape of his neck, sending an involuntary prickling sensation down his spine. We're not clear yet, she observes. I can see that, he replies tersely, punching in evasive maneuvers. Their small ship rattles under the strain, and the proximity alarms beep wildly. Another jolt slams them as an enemy fighter lands a glancing shot on their aft shields. Kane curses, rerouting power. "Get on the gun," he snaps, jerking his thumb at the secondary station behind her. She slides into the co-pilot seat seamlessly. "Aren't you worried I'll shoot you in the back?" She takes the controls of the turret, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Less worried about that than being blown to pieces," he mutters. "Take them out, or either of us survives." She doesn't respond verbally, but the hum of the turrets spinning up is answer enough. Kane guides the ship in a wild corkscrew pattern. Saria tracks their pursuers, unleashing volleys of bright energy that sizzle across the void. Two of the fighters are forced into evasive flight paths. One manages to slip through her barrage, circling around for another pass. Kane sends the ship into a nosedive, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. They twist, weave, and dance through the starry expanse, locked in a deadly chase. Then, with a well-timed volley from Saria, the lead fighter's engines erupt in a brilliant explosion. Debris scatters, causing the remaining pursuers to break formation. Kane capitalizes on their confusion, pushing the ship to the limit until the sensors finally show that the enemy has either retreated or been destroyed. The tension in the cockpit lingers for several beats. Only the hiss of life support and the quiet hum of their engines remains. Finally, Saria exhales, letting go of the turret controls. Her hands tremble slightly, the aftershock of adrenaline. Kane eases off the throttle and sets the vessel into a steady cruise. For a moment either speaks. Then she looks at him, brow raised. "You're one hell of a pilot," he grunts, not looking at her. "And you're a decent shot." His words are grudging acknowledgement. Together, they just survived a small war back there. But that doesn't erase the fact that she's his captive, and he needs what she knows. "Thanks for the compliment," she says, though her tone is laced with wry amusement. She leans back, tail curling around the base of the seat. "So what happens now, soldier? You drag me deeper into Imperial space, lock me up again, and we repeat the same dance?" He hesitates. The official plan is to deliver her to a high-security intelligence base for interrogation. But after everything that's happened, he's starting to doubt if that's truly the path he wants to follow. The memory of the experiments, the twisted uses of her people, he's seen enough atrocities to question the empire he once served so loyally. "I need that intel about Deveran Prime," he says, voice tight. "Then maybe we can negotiate." She arches an eyebrow. "Negotiate." A single word, but dripping with skepticism. "And you're going to promise me freedom? Because if not, I'm better off jumping out an airlock." He inhales slowly, turning to face her. The cramped cockpit forces them close. Her hair glows faintly in the ship's overhead lights, and the lingering tension between them thickens. "I'm done making blind promises," he finally says. "But I'm also not handing you over to be someone else's experiment. Whatever we do, it'll be on our terms." She studies him for a few heartbeats, as though trying to decipher whether he's lying. A faint smirk touches her lips. "Fine. Our terms, soldier. Let's see if you can keep your word." An alert chimes, reminding them both that the ship has sustained moderate damage. Kane checks the readouts. "We'll need to find a safe harbor to repair and refuel. Somewhere off the Empire's usual routes." Saria's tail flicks contemplatively. "I know a place, but it's not exactly under your Empire's control." He's silent for a beat, then nods. "Show me." "I don't care who controls it as long as we can lay low and fix the ship. Then we'll talk." He relinquishes the NAV console to her, a small gesture of trust, or perhaps an acknowledgement that she knows more about the underworld routes than he does. She inputs a series of coordinates, glancing at him occasionally as if to gauge his reaction. But he remains focused, lips pressed together in a firm line. Their forced alliance is precarious at best, yet the stakes have never been higher. Their motivations clash and intertwine in equal measure. The next phase of their journey begins with a hyperdrive jump, starlines stretching across the cockpit as they tear through space. They settle into a tense silence, bodies thrumming with the aftermath of combat. Saria glances his way, noticing the subtle lines of fatigue around his eyes. Normally, she'd seize this moment of vulnerability, press him for answers, exploit any weakness. But for reasons she can't quite articulate, she holds back. Perhaps it's the realization that without him, she'd still be a captive in that station. Or maybe it's the flicker of admiration for his unwavering skill and resolve. Kane, meanwhile, remains a statue of composure, but inside chaos churns. The mission to find the betrayers who cost him everything has led him to this tenuous partnership with an alien woman who both aggravates and intrigues him. Her defiance is a constant test of his patience, but there's a raw magnetism in the way she moves and speaks. He won't allow desire to cloud his judgment, though. He's worked too long on perfecting his control. Yet memories of how her body felt under his grip, the quickening of her pulse, linger in his mind with disconcerting clarity. The ship exits hyperspace at the edge of a crimson nebula. The swirling cosmic dust glows with an eerie radiance, reflecting off Saria's eyes as she studies the readouts. There's a small, hidden outpost inside the nebula, a place rumored to cater to those who deal in black market trades and no questions asked repairs. Kane sets a course to navigate carefully through the nebula's electromagnetic storms. Lightning arcs in the distance, painting the cockpit in fleeting flashes of red and gold. Saria points to a cluster of beacons. There. Docking Bay Epsilon, if I recall. We'll have to keep a low profile. The people here won't hesitate to sell us out if they sense an opportunity. He gives a curt nod. Understood. Let's get this over with quickly. They slip through the swirling currents, battered by turbulence until they reach a battered docking ring. A pair of skeletal structures extends, guiding them to a rickety airlock. Kane expertly sets the ship down, powering off non-essential systems. The hum of the engines subsides, leaving them both in a hush broken only by the occasional spark of damaged circuits. He stands, casting a hard look at Saria. Behave, he warns, or I'll drag you back here by your tail. She snorts softly, but there's a flicker of amusement in her golden eyes. As if you could catch it. They descend the ramp into a dimly lit hangar filled with shadows. A handful of dock workers loiter around, their eyes scraping over the new arrivals. Kane, armed and grim, meets their gaze without flinching. Saria trails behind him with a feline grace, holding a subtle tension in her posture in case things go wrong. They proceed through flickering corridors into a cramped common area. Every occupant here looks dangerous, sporting scars or glaring eyes, scanning the newcomers like predators sizing up fresh meat. A wiry, reptilian mechanic slithers forward, speaking in a series of hisses. Saria responds in a low voice, apparently fluent in the local dialect. The mechanic grunts, then beckons them deeper into the workshop. Kane keeps a hand on his weapon, not trusting a single soul in this place, including the one at his side. Yet their goals align for the moment: get the ship repaired, gather supplies, move on. While negotiations for repairs begin, Kane stands guard, letting Saria handle the bartering. He observes how confidently she talks, how she gestures with subtle movements of her hands, how she tilts her head just so to convey sincerity, or duplicity. He can't decide if her performance is genuine, or if she's toying with the mechanic. Regardless, after several tense minutes she secures a deal. It will take a few hours to fix the worst of the damage. Exhaustion begins to gnaw at them. Gunfights and narrow escapes tend to wear on even the hardiest soldier. Saria suggests they find a private corner or a bunk to lie low while the repairs happen. Kane hesitates, reluctant to let his guard down, but practicality wins out. The outpost offers cramped rooms for a steep price, though it's safer than sleeping in the open where any thug could ambush them. They find themselves in a narrow chamber with battered walls and a single overhead light that sputters every few seconds. There's one small cot. Kane glares at it like it's an affront to his dignity. Saria, however, just shrugs and starts checking her acquired gear. He locks the door behind them, pressing a palm to his forehead, trying to quell the throbbing headache that's been building. Get some rest if you can, he mutters. I'll keep watch. She casts him a curious glance. Worried I'll murder you in your sleep? He slumps against the wall. I haven't survived this long by being naive. For once, she doesn't reply with a snarky remark. Instead, she sinks onto the edge of the cot, her posture betraying her own fatigue. The swirl of tension between them doesn't dissipate. If anything, it lingers heavier in the confined space. Kane pulls up a creaking metal stool and positions it by the door, crossing his arms. Minutes slip by in silence, broken only by the distant hum of machinery outside. Saria eventually shifts, lying back on the cot, tail draping off the side. She closes her eyes, though her breathing remains too measured to be genuine sleep. Kane senses her awareness, just as she senses his unwavering scrutiny. In that hush, Kane's mind drifts to the events of the day. The infiltration of the station, the unleashing of chaos, the sabotage that forced them together. He's still not entirely certain who orchestrated that attack, but it's clear Saria was the primary target. Whatever she knows, it's valuable enough that people will kill to obtain or silence it. He glances at her prone form. In the faint light, her hair gleams with vibrant color, and the lines of her body are elegantly sculpted with alien grace. She's lethal, cunning, and irreverent, a combination that should repulse him. Instead, he finds a flicker of admiration stirring beneath his stoic exterior, which irritates him more than he cares to admit. A soft sigh escapes her, and she shifts slightly on the cot. Kane's gaze lingers on the curve of her shoulder, remembering how she felt pressed against him in the firefight. He crushes that memory, refocusing on the door. He can't allow desire or curiosity to derail his mission. Perhaps after he gets the answers about Deveran Prime, he'll consider what to do with her. For now, vigilance is paramount. They remain in a half-tense, half-restful lull until the outpost's overhead comm system crackles to life, announcing that repairs are nearly done. Saria opens her eyes, pushing herself up with a small stretch. "That was quick," she murmurs. "Guess they like credits better than long conversations." Kane stands, nodding. "Let's go." He unlocks the door, stepping aside for her. She moves past him with a cat-like grace, tail brushing against his thigh. It's an entirely incidental contact, or is it? She offers no apology. He grits his teeth and follows. They navigate back to the mechanic's workshop. The reptilian alien hisses a confirmation that the engine is patched and the hull breach is sealed. Payment is exchanged without ceremony. Kane calculates their limited funds. This outpost drained a significant portion, but it can't be helped. As they walk back to their ship, Saria glances around, scanning the outpost's underbelly. "A place like this is crawling with informants. I doubt we can stay off the radar for long." "Then we leave now," Kane says, punching the access code to lower the boarding ramp. The interior is dim, the lights set to conserve power. He heads for the cockpit, and she follows, a silent presence at his shoulder. Moments later, they detach from the dock, drifting once more into the nebula's swirling currents. Kane sets a course away, back toward the edges of civilized space. Once they clear the chaotic storm of red dust, they'll have to decide on their next move. The tension between them remains thick, though it's taken on a new flavor, no longer strictly adversarial. Their forced partnership, tested by survival, has forged a grudging respect. Yet the question of trust hangs in the air like a loaded weapon. Kane engages autopilot for a brief window of calm. He turns his seat to face Saria, who leans against the cockpit doorway, arms crossed. "So," he says, voice clipped, "let's talk about Deveran Prime." She holds his gaze. "If I tell you everything I know, you'll have no reason to keep me alive. You'll hand me over to your superiors or kill me yourself." He scoffs. "I'm not in the business of killing indiscriminately. And as for handing you over, let's just say my faith in the Empire is complicated." She tilts her head, ears perking slightly. "Complicated," she echoes. "Look, I don't relish trusting a human soldier, but if it means we can stop what's happening to my people, especially those who've been shrunk, dissected, traded like contraband, then maybe I'll take the risk." He leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "So talk. Show me that trust." A flicker of hesitation crosses her features. Then she steps closer, voice low. "The ones behind the labs on Deveran Prime are more than just rogue scientists. There's a high-level conspiracy within your empire's command structure, working with certain corrupt elements of my own species. They're harvesting phytotheory biology, especially the unique organs we call coconuts. They produce potent pheromones that can be weaponized or sold at astronomical prices on the black market. She curls her tail protectively around her leg, as though the mere mention of these cruel experiments is enough to stir deep revulsion. They turn us into living resources, caging and minimizing us. Some phytotheory are reduced in size, forced through molecular compression, easier to transport and exploit. A spark of anger ignites in his chest. He'd heard rumors, but never this level of detail. And the name you have, someone in the Empire is leading this operation? She nods. I know his codename, Vinal. He's orchestrating shipments of these, for lack of a better word, miniature phytotheory across the sector. He uses the labs on Deveran Prime as a central hub, hiding under the guise of top-secret research for the war effort. Kane's mind snaps into focus. If Vinal is indeed the same figure rumored to have orchestrated the betrayal that cost him his squad, then the pieces fit. We'll go after him, he says with quiet resolve. But don't think for a second that I'm doing this for you or your people alone. I have my own reasons. She offers a ghost of a smile, though it doesn't reach her eyes. Fine by me. As long as it gets the job done. Then her gaze flickers to the NAV console. And once we confront this Vinal? Kane doesn't answer immediately. His thoughts drift to the horrors he's witnessed, the torment inflicted on living beings in the name of profit or power. I'll make sure he can't do this again, he finally says, each word laced with an undercurrent of lethal promise. Saria watches him, the tension in the small space magnifying the electricity between them. She can feel the simmer of anger and purpose that resonates from him, and it stirs her own convictions. For a moment, they share a silent understanding, one forged in blood and necessity. Neither will rest until the culprits pay for their crimes. But underlying that mutual resolve is another undercurrent, a gravitational pull that neither wants to acknowledge too openly. Each time she stands this close, each time his breath mingles with hers in the stale recycled air of the cockpit, the energy in the air crackles. He hates her defiance. She despises his rigid control. Yet they can't deny there's a dark fascination in watching the other balance so precariously between violence and vulnerability. She breaks eye contact first, turning to the console. We'll need to approach Deveran Prime carefully. The planet's under heavy surveillance by both the Empire and local warlords. Kane nods. We'll find a way in. He punches in a preliminary course, though it'll be a few hyperjumps before they arrive. That leaves them trapped together in the confines of this ship, with nowhere to go and plenty of tension to navigate. They drift through space, each lost in separate thoughts, the hum of the engines their only companion. Hours pass in uneasy quiet. At one point, Kane disappears into the back to check on the ship's systems, leaving Saria alone in the cockpit. She stares out at the starfield, her reflection superimposed on the transparent panel. Her mind churns with memories of the labs, of cages full of her kin, of broken cat-like forms with no voice left to scream. Gratitude isn't something she feels easily, but she can't dismiss the fact that Kane pulled her out of captivity. That conflict roils in her chest, a reluctance to trust a human soldier, offset by the spark of something more primal every time she meets his gaze. Eventually, she wanders the ship until she finds him in the makeshift armory, sorting through blasters and ammo. He barely acknowledges her, continuing his methodical checks. She leans against the doorway, arms folded. Do you ever let your guard down? He finishes inspecting a rifle. No. She quirks an ear at him. Not even with a potential ally? He sets the rifle aside, finally looking at her. We're not allies. We're using each other to achieve a common goal. His tone is flat, but there's a muscle twitch in his jaw that betrays a deeper unease. She steps closer, stopping a few inches away. And what about after? When the labs are destroyed, when Vinal is dealt with? Are we enemies again? Or do you plan to put me on a leash? His gaze flickers to the slender collar around her neck, a leftover from her captivity. It's non-functional now, but the symbol remains. He grimaces. I'm done following blind orders, he says quietly. Once this is over, you're free to go. I'm no saint, but I'm not a slaver. She doesn't move, meeting his eyes with an inscrutable expression. Then, slowly, she lifts a hand, brushing the tip of her finger along the seam of the collar until she finds the latch. With a deft motion, she snaps it open, letting it drop to the floor. The clang echoes in the enclosed space. Her breath trembles slightly. I appreciate that, she says, her voice subdued. He wonders if this is the first time she's ever removed such a device willingly in front of a human. The gesture is oddly intimate, standing here in the hush of the armory with the weight of her past literally falling away. Despite himself, he finds his eyes lingering on her neck, on the smooth skin left bare. The tension between them swells, thick and irresistible. She steps closer, the warmth of her body radiating through the scant inches that separate them. There's a challenge in her eyes, as if she's daring him to make a move, or to back away. Everything about this moment feels like a coiled spring, a battle of wills. He can smell the faint scent of her, sharp and alluring. He wrestles with himself. Desire wars with caution, with resentment, with a longing for simple human contact he's denied himself for too long. Finally, he breaks the silence. You're testing me, he accuses, voice rough. A slight smile curves her lips. Always. Her tail sways behind her, sinuous and slow, revealing her heightened awareness. Tell me, soldier, do you ever let yourself want anything? His hand clenches at his side. I want justice. Vengeance. And I'll have it. She lifts a hand and places it lightly on his chest, feeling the rapid thud of his heartbeat. That's not all you want. Her words are nearly a whisper, that subtle vibrato in her tone vibrating with a seductive edge. We've both been wronged. We're both looking for something to fill that void. But it's not enough to just kill the ones responsible, is it? He inhales sharply, hating how accurate she might be. A deep scowl etches across his features, and he steps back an inch, breaking the contact. Don't presume you know me, he growls, though his voice lacks its usual conviction. She allows him that step of space, but the hungry spark in her gaze doesn't dim. Fine. Keep your walls for now. Then she turns, slipping from the room with a feline grace. His entire body remains taut, like a string pulled to the brink of snapping. He should be relieved that she's gone, that he can breathe again, but a part of him feels even more unsettled. The hours blend together as they traverse star systems. They make quick stops for fuel, always wary of ambush. Each time, their synergy in danger grows more natural, covering each other in fights, anticipating the other's move. They still snap and snipe at each other with words, but the sting of genuine hatred is no longer there. Finally, the swirling green orb of Deveran Prime appears on the ship's scanners. Kane reduces speed, approaching the planet from a low-traffic vector. The atmosphere is thick with clouds, and numerous Imperial satellites revolve in orbit. Saria leans over his shoulder in the cockpit. There, she says, indicating a lesser patrolled region. We can slip into the upper troposphere, then descend near the labs. He nods, heart thumping. This is where answers lie, where he can find Vindal. As they prepare to land, the tension thickens again. They both know a final confrontation looms, a test not only of their survival but of whether their fragile bond can endure when faced with betrayal and bloodshed. The landing is rough, the ship buffeted by harsh winds. Deveran Prime's surface is a tapestry of neon forests and looming rocky outcroppings, bathed in a pale turquoise sky. They set down in a concealed canyon, well away from prying eyes. The labs are a few kilometers away, built into a fortress-like structure on the edge of a cliff. Saria scans the horizon from the ship's ramp, tail flicking with agitation. She's on edge. Kane checks his gear, methodically strapping blasters, grenades, and extra power cells to his harness. We go in quietly, he says. Get the intel, sabotage the labs, and if Vindal is here, we deal with him. Saria meets his gaze. If we succeed, it'll send a message. No more kidnappings, no more dissected Felithari. Maybe others can follow our lead. She tries to maintain a calm facade, but her luminous markings pulse in quick flashes, betraying her anxious energy. He adjusts the strap across his chest. Remember, I don't trust easily. You try to double-cross me, I won't hesitate. She gives a dry chuckle. Same goes, soldier. Let's see how well we work together under real pressure. They set out, forging through the thick undergrowth. The planet's ecosystem is rich and humid, with vines draping across their path. Strange calls of local fauna echo in the distance. The air feels alive, bristling against their exposed skin. Saria moves with silent proficiency, using her heightened senses to scout ahead. Kane follows, scanning for potential threats on his motion tracker. At last, they reach a vantage point overlooking the facility. It's heavily guarded, with turrets and watchtowers. Kane kneels behind a cluster of rocks, raising a pair of high-powered binoculars. See those patrols? He murmurs. 3-minute rotations. We have a small window to slip through if we time it right. Saria nods, her tail flicking restlessly. The main gate is reinforced. We might have better luck scaling that side wall. They won't expect us to come from the cliff. He lowers the binoculars, fixing her with a measured look. You're not afraid of heights, I take it? She smirks, bearing a hint of fawn. You're joking, right? Without waiting for his reply, she slinks off, hugging the canyon's perimeter. Kane trails behind, muscles wound tight. His mind flicks through potential contingencies, every worst-case scenario. But part of him trusts her cat-like prowess to navigate treacherous terrain. They reach a narrow ledge, the drop below disappearing into swirling mists. With agile grace, Saria hooks a grappling line onto a jutting outcrop. Kane does the same, double-checking the harness. Together, they begin the climb. The wind buffets them, threatening to tear them from the cliff face. Every step must be measured. At times, the ledge crumbles beneath their boots. Eventually, they inch across to a maintenance hatch set into the fortress wall. Saria delicately removes a small tool from her belt, working on the hatch's locking mechanism. She glances over her shoulder at Kane, pressing a finger to her lips. He nods, tense, ready to shoot anyone who discovers them. The hatch pops open with a faint hiss, and they slip inside a dim service corridor. The corridor hums with machinery. Pipes line the walls, carrying unknown chemicals. The air smells stale, recycled, reminiscent of the labs on the station. Saria leads, ears perked for the slightest sound. Kane covers her from behind. They turn corners, bypassing security cameras with quick reflexes, ducking into alcoves as patrols pass. The deeper they go, the more oppressive the atmosphere becomes. At one junction, they hear muffled screams. Kane's jaw tenses. He silently gestures for them to investigate. Saria nods, her expression grim. They creep to a window overlooking a chamber lined with cages. Inside, smaller Felitheri, no more than half Saria's height, cower in cramped cells. Scientists in white coats move methodically between them, taking samples or injecting syringes. The sight makes Saria's markings flare in a pattern that might be akin to rage or despair. Kane's gut twists. This is worse than the rumors. He grips her arm lightly, a silent directive: focus. We'll free them, but we need to stay on mission. She gives him a reluctant nod, though tears glisten unshed in her eyes. They continue on, hearts pounding with renewed resolve. Soon, they find the main laboratory complex. Through reinforced windows, they spot the core research stations, the vile contraptions used to shrink Felitheri and harvest their organs. Guards patrol in squads, wearing advanced armor. It's a fortress within a fortress. Kane pulls Saria aside, whispering, We sabotage the power, set charges at key points, and release as many captives as we can along the way. Vindal is likely somewhere near the command center. We'll hit that last. She presses her lips together in a thin line. Let's do it. The plan is set, albeit hastily. They move like shadows, planting small explosives on critical conduits. Saria, guided by her heat-sensitive fingertips, disables alarm triggers. Kane uses a hacking device to create timed overloads in the power grids. Each step is fraught with danger, but they work in eerie tandem, an unspoken synergy making them efficient and lethal. They pick off isolated guards, stashing bodies out of sight. Saria's senses warn them whenever reinforcements approach. Kane's stoic precision ensures swift kills. At last, they stand before the row of cages containing the miniature Felithari. Saria quickly overrides the locks, throwing open the doors. Tiny figures skitter out, eyes wide with terror and confusion. Some recoil from Kane's human presence. Saria uses her native tongue, calming them, urging them to flee. The poignant sight of them, fragile, traumatized, sets a tremor in Kane's iron composure. This is what they've been reduced to. He quietly hands the stunner to Saria, letting her gently herd them toward a back passage. That's when the facility's alarms burst to life. Red lights flare, klaxons blare. Over the intercom, a voice demands all personnel secure the labs. Kane curses. They must have tripped a sensor or the missing guards were discovered. The Felithari captives scatter in panic, racing for any escape route. Saria hisses, ears flat, turning to face a squad of heavily armed soldiers now flooding the corridor. Kane and Saria launch into battle with savage precision. Gunfire shreds the walls. They duck behind a row of control panels. Saria leaps over the barrier, raking her claws across a guard's face before grabbing his weapon and firing. Kane systematically picks off enemies with headshots, his expression grim. The corridor becomes a war zone, but the outnumbered facility guards fall under the combined fury of these two. Smoke chokes the air, sparks flying from shattered consoles. Amid the chaos, a door slides open at the far end, revealing a tall figure in an officer's uniform. Kane's heart lurches with recognition. Vindal. It has to be. His face is shadowed by the swirling haze, but Kane can see the cruel twist of his lips. The officer barks orders, and more guards pour in. Then Vindal retreats back through the door, sealing it behind him. Kane's eyes blaze with vengeance. He's here! Adrenaline surges through his veins, fueling a near-blinding rage. This is the man responsible for the sabotage that led to his squad's deaths, and for the horrific exploitation of Saria's people. She notices the shift in his demeanor, and grips his shoulder. We'll get him. But don't lose your head. Her voice is raw with her own fury. They press forward, fighting through wave after wave of reinforcements. The carefully planted charges detonate in the distance, causing sections of the facility to collapse. Flickering lights and panic screams fill the corridors. At each juncture, Kane chooses the path leading to the command center. There, behind sealed blast doors, Vindal waits. Saria hurries to a control panel, hacking the door. The display flashes red, locked with high-level clearance. Meanwhile, armed soldiers rush from behind, pinning them in a crossfire. Kane covers her, returning fire with lethal bursts. Sweat trickles down his brow, and a near miss singes his jacket. Hurry! He roars, muzzle flash reflecting in his eyes. She growls in frustration. It's encrypted. I need more time. She tries another override. Sparks fly. The door remains locked. Another squad emerges from a side corridor, forcing them to take cover behind a twisted metal beam. The situation is dire, the corridor filling with swirling smoke and constant gunfire. Just when it seems they might be overwhelmed, a series of smaller Felithari, the ones they'd freed, skitter in behind the guards. They pounce on the enemy with surprising ferocity, nipping at ankles, distracting them just enough for Saria and Kane to gain the upper hand. Bolts of plasma streak the air, and within moments the corridor is littered with bodies. Blood drips from a fresh cut on Kane's arm, but he ignores it. Is there another way around? Saria peers at the sealed blast door. Maintenance shaft, maybe. I saw a schematic near the lab's main console. She sprints back to a half-ruined terminal, Kane on her heels. With the system flickering in and out, she manages to pull up a partial blueprint. Yes, here, a service corridor behind the vent system. It'll bypass the sealed door. They race through the carnage, ignoring the screams of retreating staff. Every muscle in Kane's body throbs with the single-minded drive to confront Vindal. Saria's face is set in grim determination, luminous markings surging with her heartbeat. They find the service corridor, prying open a grate. It's cramped and filled with the hum of air recyclers. Kane scoots in first, Saria following close. Their arms and legs brush in the confined space, an unavoidable closeness that stokes the simmering tension. Neither speaks of it, focusing instead on the mission at hand. After a short crawl, they emerge into the command center from a hidden access panel. Vindal stands before a massive console, flanked by two heavily armored guards. He whirls at their arrival, face twisting in rage and surprise. "You!" he snarls, leveling a sidearm at Kane. "I thought the sabotage on Braxis took care of you and your squad. You're persistent, I'll give you that." Kane steps forward, weapon aimed, voice quaking with controlled fury. "You'll pay for what you've done, to me, to them. Everything ends here." Vindal's guards open fire, forcing Kane and Saria to dive for cover behind a console. Saria returns fire, pinning one guard down. Kane flanks the other, a swift shot to the helmet neutralizing him. Vindal attempts to retreat, but Saria leaps onto the catwalk above, dropping down in front of him. He staggers back, fear in his eyes as he recognizes the deadly intent in hers. She flashes a feral grin, brandishing her claws. "Remember me? You should. My people sure do." She slashes at his gun, sending it clattering across the floor. He scrambles back, nearly tripping over a cable. Kane steps up from behind, pressing his blaster between Vindal's shoulder blades. "You made a mistake," Kane says, voice low, "when you betrayed my squad to cover your operations here. And an even bigger mistake underestimating what we'd do to see you pay." Vindal's bravado crumbles. He raises his hands, trembling with indignation and fear. "I can offer you credits, vast fortunes. You're both clearly skilled, join me, and we can expand the trade. You'll have everything you want." Kane's disgust is palpable. "You think after all this, we'd join your sick enterprise?" Saria hisses. "You shrank my kin, sold them like products. You butchered them." The luminous lines on her body pulse bright. Her tail lashes. "I'd sooner burn this place to the ground." Vindal tries to backpedal, but the cold press of Kane's blaster remains at his spine. The console screens flicker, and an automated voice announces catastrophic systems failure. The sabotage is reaching critical levels. Soon, the entire lab will collapse, consumed by the chain reactions. Saria steps forward, letting her claws hover an inch from Vindal's throat. "It's over," she whispers, hatred lacing each syllable. Kane's finger tightens on the trigger. He envisions all the horrors unleashed by this man, the betrayal that cost his squad their lives. The thirst for vengeance throbs in his veins. But at the last moment, something stops him. He glances at Saria, reading the torment in her eyes. She's lost countless kin to Vindal's monstrous schemes. If anyone deserves to strike him down, it's her. In a single fluid motion, Saria slashes across Vindal's chest. He gasps, blood spraying the console. He collapses, choking. The lights flicker wildly as the facility's meltdown escalates. Saria stands over him, chest heaving, luminescent stripes blazing. Vindal tries to speak, but only a wet gargle emerges. In his final moments, fear and desperation cloud his gaze. Then his body goes limp. A rumble shakes the command center. Kane grabs Saria's arm. "We have to go, this whole place is about to blow." She nods, her breathing ragged, adrenaline surging. They sprint back the way they came, half leaping through flames and debris. Explosions ripple along the corridors, the structure collapsing around them. By some miracle, they reach an emergency exit that leads to the cliffside. The wind howls as chunks of the fortress crumble, plunging into the swirling mists below. Kane grips Saria's hand, leaping across a gap in the collapsing walkway. They land hard, rolling onto the rocky ledge, battered by dust and smoke. She clings to him for a moment, coughing from the fumes. They look back in time to see the labs implode in a violent storm of fire and smoke. One final explosion lights the sky, ensuring the research site, along with its horrors, has been annihilated. Kane helps Saria stand. Her eyes reflect the flames, tears mingling with relief. It's over. Vindal is dead, the operation destroyed. The leftover captive Felithari, if they survived, have a chance at freedom. Her knees threaten to buckle, but he steadies her. She arches her neck to look at him, eyes shimmering with gratitude and something deeper, something unstoppable. In that charged moment, the fury and strain of all they've been through converges. Their gazes lock in mutual acknowledgement. Without words, their mouths crash together in a frenzied kiss, a collision of desperation and triumph. It's not gentle or tentative, either of them knows gentleness in this life. Instead, it's a battle of wills, a raw claiming of breath and heat, as though confirming that they're still alive, still standing. She grips his collar, pulling him closer, her teeth grazing his lower lip. He answers with a low growl, hands sliding around her waist. The wind whips around them, carrying the scent of smoke and scorched metal, but all that matters is the frantic beat of their hearts and the electric spark of contact. The universe contracts to the two of them, battered survivors of mutual pain. When they finally break apart, gasping, they stare at each other, wide-eyed at the intensity of what just happened. Neither apologizes or explains. There's no time for that, not now. He runs a thumb over her cheek, smudging the grime. She exhales shakily, tail curling around his thigh in a possessive, trembling gesture. She breathes. We need to get out of here before the reinforcements arrive. He just nods, still reeling from the burst of adrenaline and raw passion. Our ship is a few clicks away. She withdraws, but the grip of her hand on his remains firm. Together, they pick their way through the rubble-strewn path, hearts pounding in sync. At last, they find their craft in the hidden canyon. The hull is covered in dust from falling debris, but it's intact. Clambering inside, they seal the hatch, and Kane powers up the engines. The screens flicker to life, the warnings beep about minor damage from the initial infiltration. He sets the thrusters to maximum, guiding the ship out of the canyon and into the sky. Below them, the fortress is an inferno of destruction. Overhead, the night sky of Deveron Prime twinkles impassively, unaware of the monumental shift that just took place. In the cockpit, Saria collapses into the co-pilot seat, tail flicking in a jittery rhythm. It's done, she murmurs, as if testing the words. No more labs. No more Vindal. Kane's mouth is set in a taut line. Relief mingles with the echoes of rage. But a sense of finality also looms. He's achieved the revenge he sought for his squad. The hollow space inside him remains, yet not as desolate as before. Yeah, he says softly. It's done. She studies him in the quiet cabin light. So what now? He exhales, shoulders slumping. I'm not going back to the Empire. Not after this. He glances at her. I promise you your freedom if you help me. Looks like you're free. She quirks a tired smile. And if I don't want to leave just yet? He meets her eyes, something unspoken passing between them. The memory of that desperate kiss, the press of her body, the savage joy of fighting side by side. You're always testing me, he murmurs. She tilts her head. Call it curiosity, soldier. Or maybe I've gotten used to having you around. A wry twist of her lips accompanies the admission. He feels an unexpected warmth bloom in his chest. Then stay, he says simply. I'm not sure where I'm headed, but you're welcome to come along. We can figure it out. Her bioluminescent markings pulse gently, reflecting a calm acceptance. I'd like that. Maybe there's more to do, others still need help. And maybe we can figure out whatever this is. She gestures vaguely between them. He nods, eyes drifting forward to the star-filled expanse beyond the cockpit. No more labs, no more Empire, no more lost squads. His tone softens. And no more cages. The engines roar as the ship ascends through the atmosphere, leaving the flaming husk of the fortress behind. Saria leans her head back, exhaustion claiming her. Kane sets the autopilot for a safe trajectory, then reaches over and brushes a stray lock of her vivid hair from her face. She gazes at him, a silent question in her eyes, uncertain yet hopeful. Their future is unwritten, but for the first time, they're unbound by the horrors of the past. As the ship breaks through the planet's gravity well, the stars stretch out in an endless tapestry. And in that moment, they share a final look, a promise of possibility, of a bond forged in conflict, sealed by passion, and tempered by trust. The path ahead may be fraught with new dangers, but they'll face it together, for however long it lasts. The craft slips into open space, engines humming with steady resolve. The planet that bore witness to their revenge shrinks behind them, its swirling clouds and neon forests fading into the distance. There are no regrets, no second thoughts about what they destroyed. Only the lingering weight of what they've lost, and the glimmering hope of what they might find. Kane rests a hand on Saria's shoulder, and she places hers over his, fingers entwined in a gesture either of them expected to offer so soon. But it feels right, earned, honest, and definitive. They set a new course, leaving Deveran Prime behind, hearts pulsing in tandem as they vanish into the star-streaked horizon.